Hi, this is Joy at Red Pine Quilt Shop. We are talking about 3-yard quilt patterns today. The pattern book that I'm going to highlight a little bit is the Make It Patriotic with 3-yard quilts pattern book from Donna Robertson and Fran Morgan at the Fabric Cafe. We carry a whole bunch of their 3-yard quilt books. Nate's going to show you a few other ones that we have. We have a whole bunch here in the shop. We're always bringing new ones in, and we love their 3-yard quilt patterns. So the way that the 3-yard quilt patterns work is you can make them with 3 1-yard cuts of fabric, and it will make a throw size quilt. So what we want to talk a little bit about today is picking fabrics for your 3-yard quilts. So the key thing really when you're picking fabric for a 3-yard quilt is to pick 3 1-yard cuts of fabric that all have good contrast with each other. When you're making a quilt with just 3 different fabrics, they are all going to touch each other at some point in time. So you want to make sure that the 3 fabrics that you pick have good contrast with each other. You also in general want to have a light, medium, and dark in your mix so that your quilt has interest and it has depth. So I have one of the quilts in front of me. This is actually a quilt that was made with one of Donna's individual patterns, not a book. It's a project called Stepping Stones, and here the blue was our dark, the flag print was our medium, and the off-white print was our light. So definitely keep those key things in mind. Now the other thing that I want to mention to you as well is if you have a 3-yard quilt pattern that you love, but you're maybe working with fabric in your stash and you're going to just make it with your stash fabrics, you might find that you don't have 3 1-yard cuts, but maybe you've got a couple 1-yard cuts and you've got a couple half-yard cuts. You can always look at these patterns and decide if you want to use more fabrics. They were written for 3-yard cuts, 3 1-yard cuts to make it easy and simple for you to put the fabrics together. But if you're working stuff out of your stash, use what you have, use it up, and you can always look at the patterns and see, you know, maybe you have a shade of blue you're going to use here, and maybe you have another print, a bigger print that you want to use for the border. So definitely don't be afraid to change it up. It's your quilt. You can change it. If you want to use more than one print, you can go for it and do that. If you had a solid red, you could have done these cornerstones in a solid red instead of continuing the flag print. That would have been just fine. You know, like I said, this border would have been easy to change out. If you didn't want to use the tan for the binding, you could have done a dark navy. So look at what you have and work some of those things out of your stash into 3-yard quilts, even if they are not a full 1-yard cut. See where you can actually use multiple fabrics. We had a beautiful project in the shop that we kitted with a Christmas collection, and it was a 3-yard quilt pattern from the Fabric Cafe, and we had probably 7 different fabrics in that quilt, and you looked at it and nobody realized it was a 3-yard quilt pattern until they looked at it and saw it, because it looked so different with the different fabrics in the mix. So for simplicity's sake, if you want something quick and easy, go for the 3 1-yard cuts, or look at the pattern and change it up, and especially, like I said, pull some of those things out of your stash, even if they're smaller cuts, and figure out how you can work them in. The wonderful thing about these patterns is they're all block based. They're easy to reduce, to enlarge, or to make smaller if you choose to, because they are all block based quilts, and they are also ones that are simple, quick, and easy to put together. They're great beginner patterns for the most part, and they're simple, quick, and easy to put together. So they're fun patterns to do. They're great quilts to make if you are maybe looking for something to donate to Quilts of Valor, especially the ones in the Patriotic book, or if you're looking for quilts to make as gifts. They're quick things to put together and get done, and we all like to get things done. So when you're picking the fabrics, I want to show you actually the beginning section to the book, and Nate's going to just give you a quick peek at this. But in the beginning of the books, there's actually 2 pages of tips and techniques instructions, and I really highly recommend that if you're new to making 3-yard quilts, that you grab a cup of coffee and you read through these 2 pages because they're going to give you some really good directions to help you get off to a good start. One of the things that they recommend is that you put your medium fabric in fabric position 1, and these are fabric positions called for in the pattern, and that you put your light in fabric 2 and your dark in fabric 3. And here's actually an image of one of the quilts, and they can show you how it ends up looking. And that is their recommendation. So we usually encourage you to go by that if you can, because it will make the blocks pop out in the manner that they envisioned it. Now, you don't have to do it that way. It's interesting, if you put your dark in a different position, you will basically make a different part of the block be accented. And the quilt sometimes looks very, very different, but it's okay. So if you do not follow their recommendation as far as where the light, medium, and dark are placed, just look at how it's going to impact the quilt and make sure that you like how it's going to end up instead. The other thing I want to mention with the 3-yard quilts is there are instructions in all of the new books on how to actually enlarge your quilt. They talk about it a little bit here in the tips and tricks about adding borders. You can always add borders to make a quilt larger, or you can actually buy additional fabric to make the quilt larger as well. So if you buy 3 1-yard cuts of fabric, by design the quilt will be a throw size quilt. If you buy 2 or 3 2-yard cuts of fabric, so basically kind of 2 kits, so you have 2 yards of each of the fabrics, you can make a twin size quilt. And if you want to make a queen/king size quilt, then you need 4 cuts of 4-yard cuts of 3 different fabrics. It's hard to say. So anyway, to make a throw size quilt, it's a 1-yard cut of 3 different fabrics. Twin size quilt, it's a 2-yard cut of 3 different fabrics. And for a queen or king size, it's a 4-yard cut of 3 different fabrics. So they're always designed for 3 different fabrics, and it's just depending on how much yardage you need to make the quilt. Now, the fun thing with all the new books is that all of the new books are actually designed to be enlarged, and they have instructions right in the patterns for enlarging them. So all of Donna's new books will have instructions to make it as a throw, and also to make it as a twin, or to make it as a queen/king. And she has instructions for how to cut more, make more blocks, etc., to make those bigger sizes. So if adding borders doesn't get you where you want to do, then plan to make more blocks and make a larger quilt that way. And she's got instructions in there. Now, if you have an older book of Donna's, she didn't always have the enlarging instructions in the books, but they're block-based quilts, so it's easy to figure out. And just keep in mind the 1, 2, 4, and that's your yardage amounts of 3 different fabrics to do the various sizes. So you can always figure it out yourself if you do need to, but her new books all have the enlarging in them. This is her new book that we're highlighting, that is actually the new patriotic book, and I'm just going to give you a quick glance at the patterns on the back. Really, really fun ones. Now keep in mind, it was done as a patriotic book, so they used red, white, and blue fabrics for pretty much all the quilts. But there is no reason that you have to make these with red, white, and blue fabrics. This one could be really fun with a novelty print. Maybe you have someone who loves coffee, and you throw a fun coffee cup print in that square, and you do a cream background, and then maybe here you do 2 different coffee bean fabric. So rather than doing this dark blue with the same fabric, you put a fun focal print here, and you maybe put a coffee bean fabric there. A darker tan and a lighter tan for the background would be super cute. So keep in mind that you can change things up. You can change it up and do it with whatever color fabric you want. Don't have to necessarily do these with patriotic. There's a beautiful star quilt here called Liberty. I could totally see that done with Christmas fabric. So just keep in mind, you can change the colors up. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to follow their color palette. And get brave about not always using just 3 1-yard cuts of fabric. It really can make the quilts kind of interesting. I'm going to show you some fabrics that we've pulled for kits just to kind of help you with the picking of fabrics part. Now, this is a very large focal print. It's a very pretty tulip print. And for a print like this to work, you have to have a quilt similar to this one, where you have a large area to highlight that focal print. There's a pattern that is actually in this book called Fireworks that has a big black area. That would be a perfect spot to highlight that tulip print. So if you have a really big focal print, just keep in mind that you need to pick your pattern appropriately to pick a pattern that has a spot where you can highlight that up and not cut it up too much. So this one is a one that would need one of those bigger areas to highlight that pretty focal print. So in this mix, this would be our medium, this would be our light, kind of our background, and this would be our dark. So that's how that particular stack would shake out. This one is a fun Americana one. We're picking some Americana fabrics for some new 3-yard quilt kits here at the shop. This would be our light, this would be our medium, and the bottom blue would be our dark. And this one would be really fun in some of those patterns from the new Make It Patriotic book. Here's another fun one. And for this one, this fun tie-dyed print, again, is a larger print. You'd want to have a pattern that has a little bit bigger area so you can really show that fun kind of tie-dyed print off. That would be your medium, the red would be our dark, and then this tone-on-tone flag print would be our light. So as you can see in these stacks, there's contrast between all the pieces, and there's a light, medium, and dark, and that's really the key to making a 3-yard quilt that's going to turn out well and be a great quilt to show off the design of the pattern. So that's some tips and tricks for you on making 3-yard quilts. You can find a whole range of 3-yard quilt books and some single patterns as well on our website at www.redpinequiltshop.com. So www.redpinequiltshop.com. Thanks for joining us today.